There was a good reason I learned to speak English fluently and confidently by the age of 20, and I'm about to share with you this. I know I wasn't living in the UK yet, and I achieved all of this while doing 2 majors at university, or when I was in high school, I was studying really hard and doing a part-time job plus having an active social life. So I wouldn't even say I had a lot of free time, but I still did it because I did this one thing that if you develop as a skill, you'll find that the fastest way to make progress with English is the consistent way. And most struggling English students don't understand this word. Consistency doesn't mean you need to study every single day without a break. And it doesn't even mean that you have to study for 3 hours once and then nothing for the rest of the week. It's simply finding a way to make time for English in your schedule based on how busy you are, and it can change from week to week, and doing your best to stick with it. And if you want to reach a good level of English fluency where you can communicate effectively without always thinking about what to say and make close connections with people or get access to a better job, and you often find yourself looking for words, forgetting words, or always thinking, when am I gonna get fluent? And sometimes you might feel like you're going backwards. I always use the analogy of a garden to explain how important staying consistent is. Your English is simply like a garden. There are parts you already know pretty well, the fully grown trees and bushes, but there are also a bunch of words and grammar that you don't know how to use. They are the seeds that you're just planting. Now, what happens if you plant those seeds, keep watering them, and you see no growth? Most struggling English students are incredibly impatient, which is understandable. We all go through school where we learn about this incredibly inefficient, old school memorization technique that helps us pass a test and remember vocabulary for 24 hours. But then what happens after? The word is gone into oblivion. And we also live in this world where we can get food in 5 minutes, we can get from one place to another in a really short amount of time, and swipe through a bunch of videos where people are laughing, having fun, celebrating, crying, shouting at each other. So we kind of get used to this, what we call instant gratification, which is something I talk a lot about in this video. So if you want to remember vocabulary or grammar in the long term as you're having conversations with other people, just like when we have a garden, we want to have those beautiful flowers and plants and vegetables. We need to water them, take care of them, and nurture them, which kind of translates into actively engaging with the vocabulary that you listen to, you watch, or you read in English, finding ways to review that vocabulary so they stay longer in your mind, and having conversations where you actively use them. And if you look at a real garden, not every single plant is going to grow at the same pace. So we can't expect to remember all the vocabulary all the time that we learned. And the funny thing about the brain, and if you're interested in finding better ways to remember grammar and vocabulary as you speak English, because you improve the way you're learning grammar and vocabulary, make sure you check out this video where I put together everything I know about and I teach about how the brain learns better, is that sometimes we can't really control what we remember better and what we just can't remember, even if we try and look at it for 3 to 5 times. So not remembering some words and remembering other words better, forgetting some words but remembering others better are perfectly fine. These are part of the process. Plus, let's not forget that instead of feeling disappointed about forgetting words, let's look at them from a more empowering point of view and see, well, this is a sign that I need to review this vocabulary so that I remember it the next time I need it. Hey English learner, welcome back to my channel. My name is Chubby. I'm an English fluency learning and language anxiety coach, and this is a channel for serious English learners who want to learn how to make vocabulary more memorable. Part of that is gonna be consistency, and speak English more freely, confidently, and comfortably with the help of listening and spoken interaction. So these are topics that you're interested in and you'd like to find out more about. I've already made more than 50 videos in the last year and a half, so make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell so you get my weekly updates, long and short form videos that will help you with all of this. The reason why consistency is literally the fastest way to make progress with English isn't because it's simply how your brain learns anything, but also because it's gonna help you feel so much more relieved and not always disappointed, worried, frustrated about your progress, because you're going to look at learning English as a process. You may forget words that you spend so much time learning. You may make the same mistake again and again, even if you get the feedback, which might sting, but they are part of the process. And as somebody who's walked this path and already towards the end of this long journey called learning to speak English fluently, I can tell you there's one thing you should stop looking for is any other place for the fastest way to make progress with English, no matter what all other adverts and schools are trying to convince you about, like 90 days for fluency and stuff. You're gonna get to a point in your fluency when you walk into any conversation, knowing what to say, remembering most of the grammar and vocabulary, pronouncing words clearly, as long as you stay consistent. When you were a little kid, learning your first language, did you ever get impatient about not making progress with your first language? Did you used to look at your parents and say, oh, they are so fluent, why can't I put 3 sentences together without hesitating? Can you see this energy behind this unhealthy, impatient way of thinking? Sometimes it was extremely challenging for me to make time for my English. When I was a high school student, I went to an elite high school where the requirements were pretty high. So we had to study for 4, 5, 6 hours a day. And I also had dancing classes 2 times a week. And because my parents couldn't support me with all my studies, I had to work part-time right after school for a few hours, a few days. And let's just not forget that my high school, which I'm gonna show you a beautiful picture of, was 30 kilometers away from my hometown. So I needed to travel that distance twice a day. But I still didn't forget about my goals and my dream of moving to London and living a dream life there that I always talk about and mention, that I used as motivation. And I did my part as much as I could. A little bit of watching movies and then taking notes of some of the vocabulary, a little bit of reviewing vocabulary that I found important and useful to remember, and then finding ways to regularly have conversations with other people. I see way too many struggling English students who find it difficult to stay consistent with their English. And it's understandable. We never learned how to stay consistent at school. This is a skill we have to develop on our own. It's something I always talk about in my coaching program, but also because in this day and age, we have a bunch of things to do that would require us about 35 to 40 hours a day, but we only have 24. I just want to remind you that it's never a question of going all in. It's never a question, if I have time, then I'm gonna do 3 hours, and if I don't have time, then I'm gonna do 0. It's more about doing as much as you can. If you only have time to maintain your level, then at least dedicate time for that. But I'm sure even if you have too much on your plate, you could spend like 10, 20 minutes every day or every second day just to do something about your English. And if you want to make it easier for you to stay consistent, I have 2 recommendations. Make sure you focus on joining a community of people, because they are going to be the ones who keep lifting you up, reminding you that just because you've experienced a bad period for a couple of weeks or a month where you don't see much progress, there is still way to go, and as long as you push through those difficult experiences, you are going to get there. The second thing is my video on how to build and sustain healthy English learning habits that allow you to stay consistent without making too much of an effort. From my own experience of learning English, and if you know me well, you know that I'm always the one who chooses the hard path, the difficult one, the challenging one, so I can grow from it, and not looking for quick fixes. But I can tell you, as long as you stay consistent, you found the fastest way to make progress with English. Consistency means not looking or not always looking at the results, and just put in some work to do some reading, listening, watching something in English, reviewing important vocabulary that you could use in the future, and then having conversations on a regular basis. Consistency also means looking at learning as a process, and that there are going to be grammar structures or words that you might find difficult to remember, that might take more time for you to automatize and use without always struggling. Sounds that you might find hard to pronounce for a long time, even after a lot of practice. There might be features of English like phrasal verbs or conditionals that no matter how much you try, you just can't for the life of you say perfectly for years on, but as long as you keep at it, you'll get better at it. Instead of feeling frustrated about still struggling to put a single sentence together, like always thinking, if I had known, always remind yourself that this is just all part of a process. And we can just go back to our garden analogy and see that no one forces a plant to grow. It just grows because it gets nutrition, care, water, and sunlight. All the right conditions for it to grow. Now, I hope that this video could be a reminder that those who stay consistent, no matter how stuck, frustrated, or unmotivated they feel, as long as they push through those difficult periods, they stop looking at the results and they look at learning English as a process, will always reach their goals and speak English fluently and confidently. You're gonna get there as well if you're part of that 5% that I'm speaking to. Thank you so much for your time and spending these few minutes with me today, and hope to see you in another video.